we made some improvements, and it's actually super exciting because it feels like the game has a heartbeat now. It's actually playable. It's not winnable. Let's do this as a first player. We'll do that, and then we have this guy as the second player. And on a last video, I told you I'll show you how I did the display name, but so we have first player, second player. Okay, I gotta fix that, and I'll show you how I fixed that. It's super easy. But okay, so we have. If you noticed, I made some changes. I made it more vertical. Let me get it here and show you, so I can scale it. And I have it kind of like the phone setup with up and down to match again the concept that we were going for. Right? We have this concept here, and so I just added. See, looks identical, right? It's just the art's missing, but it's working. So I have 3. So now we have the fields. You don't know which field is which. When you add a car, the timers will start, and you have the field, and each field will have an effect. Right now, it doesn't. But I started. I was trying to get. I was getting ahead of myself because I was getting excited, and I actually wanted to do the effects. But I was like, no, I just need to get it done so you can see the things that are happening. Okay, and then I'll show you the other player here. See how? Oh, I'm losing. Oh crap! And I forgot to bring it down. I was gonna bring down the seconds to 30 so you could see these fields giving scores. Because now I'm gonna play here, and I got 20 points. That was dumb. I'm gonna do here 4. I'm already winning in 2 fields. I'm gonna do that one there. I'm gonna beat him. Not this. I wanted to show you because it's actually kind of cool. So you'll see that they'll the fields will once it hits 0, it will grant the score. So look at the scores. Okay, did you blink? Because it's right there. First player got the first point, and then you'll see. Yeah, they're synced. And so this guy's gonna get the. I'm gonna get another point for this guy. Okay, and I better do something for this one so I can win. If I have enough time, I'll add this guy. 24, and then it's the same for everything. So the moment I play a card on a field, it'll start the timer, and it'll flip the event. So it's Marvel Snap, but it's real time, and that's pretty cool. It can get pretty crazy and hectic if the timer is 30 seconds, and I'll show you later. My friend that wants to design this game, he gave me some. I told him, hey, like I need card effects and field location effects so I can get started and kind of figuring out where I'm gonna do stuff. And him giving me got me so excited about the game that that's why I'm making this video now because I'm just like pumping through the stuff. I'm trying to think of what. Oh, so I'm gonna show you the design document and stuff that he gave me, and that's basically what I did. Is I read over that, make sure I'm hitting all the marks and I'm getting everything, and this helps me once I started building things is to understand. Okay, did I do this right? Did I not do it right? And we don't have a winning condition other than when the timer goes to 0. But we could do that for next video. So next video will be the card effects. If I can, I'll try to do the card effect. But for sure, the field effects. The fields will have effects and guaranteed, and then we'll have a winning condition. That's like the main priority. Then, if I can, I'll change the UI and do more. But that's what I'm thinking. Okay, so we'll stop that and we'll go over the list. The first thing I want to show you that I didn't show you last time, it's not a big deal, but I wanted to show you because I said I would, is the display name, the input field. So the input field, all it does when the display name changes, that text box, it will go to this scriptable object, and it just has the display name there. And as you can see, it's stored there. So the cool thing about the scriptable objects is that you can use them to store data in the same game session. So, but you have to be careful. Usually, scriptable objects are used for storing predetermined variables. And maybe it might be a bad thing to do but I've been using scriptable objects a lot, and I kind of like them for that reason because I don't have to store it. And oftentimes you have classes and you store it in a player refs or a player prefs, and then you have to oh, do I have it? Yes, no, and you're kind of jumbling data and you don't know where it is and in what state it is. So I like having these scriptable objects. predetermined stuff, and also for like modify things that I want to carry over, so I don't have to like make a bunch of do not destroy, unload or unload. Um, okay, so that's the scriptable object. So all I do is I write to that, and then on the others in the scene, I read it. I read the information, and so it's super simple. I can show you really quick. Script, not hiding anything. It's just this is to create the scriptable object, and it just has a display name and update display name as a function so that I could use the the Unity event, and it'll update the display name. And then I made it public, so then in here on the manager, it'll have this and it'll grab the display name. And because I'm again like I can access local data, and so this is the power of knowing what you're doing with these scriptable objects and network stuff. So what happens is I update the display name, and I say, okay, if I have state authority of this game object, that means I am in the first player. Again, you have the network object exists in both players' computer. How do you know when you're accessing that data? And so you have to be aware of sometimes just because you put this doesn't mean you have to make sure that this is getting called on everybody. So this is something that's running on both clients, and so yeah. And in order for it to do it once, I just have a byte that I change to 1, and if it's not 1, it'll do this once, and then it'll change it, and then it'll do this for the rest of the game. And because this happens on all the clients, this is the timer for the clock. And then here's where we would have the winning condition, right? Because we have this game timer dot expire. So this checks if the timer did not expire, it'll return. If it does expire, if it hits 0, then you can do the logic for when a timer ends. And we'll go more in detail over on the field. But I just wanted to show you the player scriptable object is a local thing. And if you have a network object, you can check and use that variable or that reference on each set. The network object exists in both players. And so that's I like doing that. But let's go over the players. So now we have the next thing to go over after this is the UI changes. Because I have this list because I wanted to make sure that I gave you the order that I did things, and not be all scattered and kind of be okay. This is what I did over like just like a few hours of work because it was a weekend and I had some spare time and I'm kind of excited. I want to get to actually building the game more. So UI changes. So I went in and I tried to figure out this scaling, this aspect ratio, because I wanted to get closer to this, and I still having some trouble like figuring out the sizes and stuff, but it's a little bit closer and better, right? If I go to the, because we're gonna dive already into this, I have these. So as you can see, they resize. Anyway, so it's the same resize features, but now we're at a different aspect ratio. Okay, we have the hands here and everything. Let's see. So and then what I did as I resized stuff, I modified things that I knew I needed to adjust. For example, the score. We needed to make sure the scores, the names. So I prefab these player panels. And later on, we'll go into the specifics of these because there's something that I want to run by you guys and see if you have thoughts about helping me out. And so just be ready for that. So these are prefabs. It just has the icon, but oh yeah, it's white. I was planning on taking it out. It doesn't really matter. Eventually what I'll do before when we make the game, we can make profiles and then you can like select your profile icon or maybe upload an image, but no, uploading an image would be bad. What we would do is just you have like a selector. I'm gonna just put a selector of images and then you can just display it. And then later, I mean, if we want to build this game out, we would build out like your profile and being able to adjust what you do and what you have. The name, pretty straightforward. There's nothing. Eventually I might have, again, if we do have a scriptable object or like that player data scriptable object might have like the image you selected and other things that your player has that they selected or they changed the settings for. And we would have a script in here to detect that change. Don't want to save. And then the next thing and there was a lot of stuff because that took a little bit to rescale everything, kind of like adjust and make sure that things were working. Um, then we had the field update for player 1 and player 2. This was a huge, well, I'm going to say huge undertaking, but it didn't take long. It's just I had to think about a lot of things. So in the field, okay, so we have this. Remember, I told you we would have field locations. But before we did this, I'm gonna go into, and I have names. Prefab. So we have, I like to look at, you have the field layout. Okay. So what I did is I went in here and just got some images to again reflect this, right? A little bit. Obviously, I'm not gonna go in full detail as to doing this because yeah, I just did something to kind of simulate that so I could restructure. Because remember, before we had these items and it was pretty straightforward. Now, when I change, now we have this field thing that I have to rotate. And you see that? Like, if I rotate that, the question mark rotates. And so I had to change what I rotate and the timer and make sure everything's rotated the right way. These are rotated the right way. They're a little wonky sometimes. So I had to do some of those adjusting and understanding because before I was, for example, rotating. Let me show you. I was rotating in World Transform and I changed it to local rotation because that took into account the parents. Because the world rotation, which just rotated and it wouldn't take into account the parents. And so it worked this way better. Or it just works this way. This is the way I had to do it. Okay, this field was the thing that I changed the most, and I want to go in order because it was like there's a lot that's changed on this already. For example, one thing that I make sure every time you start, like this is why I put 99 instead of 0 because I want the script to make sure it's in the right number. Because if I put 1 or 0, let's say I put 0 because I know it's gonna be 0, it's gonna I won't know if it's broken or not. That makes sense. So I like to fill it out with a max number, so I know it's not gonna go bigger than 99. Hopefully, if it does end up going bigger than 99, then we have to adjust it. But that's not a big deal. But I like doing that. You see, in the other ones, in here I put 3 because I want to make sure it could be any number. I could put 99999, but I like having that so that make sure that it makes me need to reset the values. Okay, I need to reset it to 000 to make sure everything starts perfect because I don't want anybody to have like 3 to begin with or to display 3 but the game is actually at 0 and then it feels like there's a discrepancy and players like buggy. So I just like doing that. Sometimes it's just a habit. I could do that with the time too. So let's go over the timer. So this is where I'm like, okay, we got to start. We have the field, and that's why I had to do all this layout. I had to make sure everything is right and the timer. And I'll show you the document. It's called framework. So this is what my friend gave me as a document to make sure this is what I need to build. It's pretty straightforward. So I can walk. So I started reading this, and mainly here in the game board. I talked about this on the previous one. We're not gonna do numbers of locations. If you want another location, just copy paste that like the setup and add the spacing, right? The same with the zones. I have it in here. If you wanted more, you have more zones in here. I put it back to 4 because I didn't want any. It was too much. Like when I was spacing things out, because I was, as you can see, I was trying to emulate this. And imagine just having to like have more in here, and then just have to shift all the things scales by 0.1 something. Really like it just because then I'm struggling to be able to see the number. So that's why I want to change the art on the cards next update to make sure I'm getting like the sizes correctly. And I did that with this. But if I wanted to add more zones to this, I would go in here. Let me see where it is. Each zone. So each zone in here has the card positions. and I can go in here and change it to 6, and then just add the transforms in here and manually put them where I want. But I don't know. Anyway, so if we need to do that, we can do that. I don't like to do things like just for the sake of, oh, we need to build a tool for that, because that's what it would be, a tool to adjust the zones and stuff. I don't think it's worth doing right now. And then now we have the countdown timer for location with a serialized field. How long the timer is that activates when a player plays a card in an empty location. So when I read this, I was like, oh, that's how it starts. Because at first I was putting them in and they would start. So now that's why I did this question mark is my way of doing that. So this is like a hacky way. Eventually we will do, where is it? And here in the image. So this image is black, but then I turn it up. Oh, where is it? Not this. To white. So I use this to turn it on. But eventually what we'll do is we will have to not prefab, but another game object that's like the back of the card, and we can do an animation to flip it forward. That's or something like that. So we could do like a literal like forward and back canvas and then just animate it. We can do whatever. And so that's something we could do. Let's see. And so I want to show you while we're here and talking about this, not technique, but a habit of mine. I don't know if I want to say habit, but I like to, and I just realized that other developers do this because I'll show you why I found out. But I like to say to do as a comment, and then just if you ever are in the middle of doing something that you're rushing to get done, but you know you want to go back and fix it or make it better, I just write to do, because then I can do Control Shift F and wait, what? Okay, here, and I find all the places I set up to do. So this is like me talking to my future self. And then you see all these spots where it says to do, and it's funny that like Fusion, they have their own thing that they also add. To go back here, and it's like, okay, TextMesh Pro, they do it too. See, like they have all these to dos that they're gonna do. And then this is mine right now, and this is the library. So I just have one. But if you do this, it's like you can see all your sticky notes almost, and know where it is, right? Because I can click on it and it'll take me there, and I'm right here, right? So I can look. And the idea is to eventually reveal the card with a VFX or animation. So I use the same timer I used in here. So what happens is, this is a way, this is how you determine if the timer ended. Okay, this timer run by this, and it's a Fusion function. It's very nice. I like it because it's super simple. I don't have to worry about the counting down. I don't have to do the script for counting down. It does it on its own. It's tick accurate, so it's accurate across both players. You've seen me use it. And so all I do is I start it and I check when it ends, and that's it. Like it's so reliant. So that's why I love Fusion, because they have these nifty tools that you just don't have to worry about. In netcode, you have to like do it yourself, which is not bad to do, but like you can run into problems doing it. So it's just a countdown timer. And you know, how many times do you count down in general in Unity? They should just have one by default too. That's not network. Okay, so let me see on the field. So on the field we have, I have the player. This is the field timer, and here's the text for it, because we have to have a text. So that's the other in here, the other thing I want to show you. Locations track the total power of each player. I did that. Once the countdown timer hits 0, so I have to show a timer, even though this picture doesn't have a timer. So we'll have to figure out, because this, oh man, there's so many stuff we have to figure out. Marvel Snap, one of the things that they did as a decision is like, you cannot have more than 8 words per card or explanation. So they have obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, almost. So like this is like the max amount of text that they want on a card. They want to say, okay, they want the effects to be simple and understood. So say it with less, like straight to the point. I'll show you the document that I got. So this is the other document that has the locations and the cards. So he's going to work on different types of cards with the favor and the power cost. This is what I'll do next time. And I'll have these effects. These are the effects for the fields. I'll have those ready next time. Most of them are pretty doable. Some are like, ooh. But let me see. The total power of each player is compared. Points are awarded with a player with a more with power. Locations need to allow a card to be moved from one location to another. This one was like, oh, I don't have that. And so, but this is good because I'm reading through this. It's like, okay, I have to do that. Put in a Trello or something. I'm gonna do that next lesson, and I'm prepared for it. But the main thing with the timer, if you look at this, let me show you where it's at. Okay, so we have all these effects that I see. I like got ahead of myself. I started doing these effect parameters. That's just booleans, like, so you can check them off in the prefab. Okay, on player power changed. What I do here is I make sure that these texts are set to 0, like I said before, right? I want to make sure that everything is displaying the correct number. Now, if we start, I created this enum to set the state for the object, for the field. So each field will have a state. They say the field is set, the field is started, and the field is done. Okay, so that's the states. Because when it's set, it has that question mark. It's not flipped. When it started, it flips, and then when it's done, it cannot place anymore. So that's like the way to stop. So if you look at these in the zones, now I have a new check for is the field done. If it's not done, it will return. Again, remember last video we went through this like huge checklist, but it's working now, right? Like we can go back and add features. That's why this is so cool that it's when you have things that are working and you don't have to rewrite everything, you know, at least some things are set up right. And if it's not set up right, you fix it instead of trying to do a workaround. But anyway, so we have that for the network field. Here's the timer. So, okay, so if we spawn a card, what happens is if the field is set, this means the field is down, it's not displayed. We spawn a card, that's what triggers the start, right? And so this is like the Boolean. It's like, okay, we are set, we changed the card, we're gonna change the card to start it, the field. So we'll set it to started just in case, because I don't want it if like the players play a card one after the other on the field. I have to make sure it doesn't trigger this twice. That makes sense. So real time is crazy, especially in multiplayer games. You have to make sure that things happen only once. And so in turn-based systems, usually it doesn't happen as often, but in real time, it's going to happen a lot. So you have to like immediately change that. Because if I waited like after doing this RPC, it's not going to happen, and that RPC is going to get called a bunch of times. So just don't assume just right away, the next doom right there. Field. So I start the timer, create from seconds, runner, and then the duration, and it starts. And then I don't have to do anything else. It just starts, and then I just check it for the text. And I do this RPC because I need all the clients to start. The field started, I need to change that color. And this is what triggers the flip effect that I need to animate. And it's going to happen on both. Both, again, on all. So it goes from the state authority to both players. And then everything's the same. Oh, this I didn't add till the end. So I'm just going to talk about it now, but I'll come back to it later. The main thing this is doing is I need to store the cards, because when the field closes down, shuts down, and puts the game puts a new field in, the previous cards have to be deleted or despawned. So I need them stored. Okay? But again, this is not a master course where like you have to write everything in one go. I did not have this until the end. But I just wanted to show you the timer. Okay, so I did the timer, and I was reading the document, and I was, okay, what is next? That's what I was like, what do I need to do? I did the timer. Now I need to be able to play the cards, or I need to go to the game manager for network variables. So if I go to the network, this is the network manager, okay? And I had the timers for the favor, that's all there. But then I had these variables I had to make sure I had. So I had field location. So this is the array, okay, and then I had the location transforms and the controller. The reason why I have this controller is because I have to add it in here to start the game. So I'm changing how the game starts. And this I did kind of later on. But let's talk about it now really quick, because what happened is that, and I almost have it where I have the player ready. I think it's in here. I haven't done it yet, but I can add a button to say, hey, the player ready. Where is it? Player ready. So I'll do that. To say, okay, I'm the first player or I'm the second player, and just set me as ready. So this is the ready up script. I haven't implemented yet. I have to add the buttons to do this. Beforehand, I had it when it joined. The problem was that I wanted to change when the hand was drawn, because I noticed if you log in first and you join the game, all your cards are drawn by default at the start of the game. So I was like, okay, I need to stop that because I need to start setting things in the right order. So I need, instead of doing, well, now I do it regardless, but eventually what I'll change it is to this. But what I do now is to kind of stop starting the game and drawing from start. I have this RPC that I needed to do to all the clients, because this is not happening on the second player. When the second player joins, he's not calling all these calls. These are happening on the master client, and because I only have 2 players, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is called on the client as well. It's just that I think the player joined doesn't happen for the for the second player, because the player 1 never joined the second player, whatever, if that makes sense. So the player 2 doesn't know when the player 1 joined. I think that's the logic. I haven't tested it long enough to, but for a while I assumed this was happening on both, but it's not. So what I do is, this is going to happen on the first player only. I check if he has state authority, and I say, okay, start the game for everybody. And this specific game is like, okay, let's tell all the local components to start. That's the way. And so right now the only local component is the player controller, which draws. So this is now how you shuffle your deck and fill your hand. We could also shuffle the deck before. I don't know, but I like doing it this way: shuffle and then draw. So there's no cheating going on, even though there's other ways people can cheat. Game started, and then so we have the timers, and this now happens. So the hand drawn is tied to the game starting. That's the main thing I wanted to do. I wanted to change the logic for the hand drawing hands, because it used to be on start. So you had start, and then I had this right here, like that. And so I removed that because I didn't want that logic to always be on start. I want it to be tied to the game starting. Okay, so I set up these regions. If you don't know about regions, they're pretty nice. I like it. It keeps my code a little bit more organized, even though I'm not good at organizing myself. So this is the field setup stuff. So when we spawn a new field. Remember, we have I'll show you in here. When the game starts, we spawn field on location 0, on location 1, and location 2. Okay. Now we have a random index on these locations, prefab. So we can add 100 different locations, and we can also add a logic for variety, or like give better odds to certain fields if we wanted for an event or what. But we haven't done that. Right now it's just random, and we spawn it. So now, instead of just spawning that prefab we have, we change between locations. So once the effects kick in, it'll be really interesting. And then we set up fields and the network manager. So what happened is, we need the game manager. Let me go here. Network field needs the game manager. So in here, we need the game manager. Where is it? It's right here. To add the scores to the field, because now we have when we have more power than the second player. And again, this timer. Remember, we have when the field timer is done, and the person that has state authority, this could eventually transfer to a self-hosted server, and that's where this code would determine who won, and then tell all the clients that who won. Because the game has the document that I got in here doesn't have anywhere in here. It says once the countdown timer, the total power of each player is compared, and a point is awarded to the player with more power. It doesn't say anything about equals, like what happens when it's equal. So, from what I understand, that there's no logic in here. If I was working and I needed to know at this point when I'm coding this, I would turn around or Slack or Discord or whatever you're using to communicate with your team, and whoever's the lead or the owner, CEO, whatever, making decisions, say, "Hey, I noticed that no one mentioned the condition for the equals. Like, what happens if they tied? What do we do?" Okay, that's something. Communication is a good thing. Like, sometimes developers, like, I think it's crucial when you're coding, because when you're in the code, you understand these edge cases, right? Because you're coding it. I'm here. I could add an equal signs, and then now the first player has more potential of winning. When it's equal, I either do something or I don't. And at this point, I don't. The design is that they don't get anything. Neither one wins. And that's okay. That's a viable option, because then you're like, is this worth to tie on this one? Or especially when you can pull cards out from one zone to the other. So you could say, okay, there's no way I'm winning this. I'm going to move this. But in real time, what if the other player does move something? And so, like, that logic of like tying and losing is like, would when you're like fighting a bunch, like you're spending a lot of stuff, and all of a sudden, like, you tie, is like last second. So it's gonna get interesting. Um, so I think this game has a lot of potential. It could be fun. But there's a phase. See, we set it to done. And here, what happens is that this is like the update method for Fusion. Okay, if the phase hasn't started, we return. We don't need to do anything. Once it starts, we'll start reading the timer. We will transform it into an int and set the timer in there. So that's the 60 seconds. I need to put it to 30 so it's easier to test or faster. And this is the fill amount. So that's how it like rotates around the image. I can show you that. We have it here, overlay. So this field amount, it'll go do, and then I think, I don't know, like how dark, I don't know how much, but anyways, so that it can be like, and then let's see. So we have the field. Just want to make sure. The hard part is that it's everywhere. It can be confusing to see all this and say, where do I start? Right? Because I'm trying to see how I can explain these things so that it makes sense. So what I did, yeah, I'm going to walk you through this so that you understand. I started with the size and position. I went into the field updates for player 1 and 2. I was like, okay, like, how are we gonna rotate stuff, UI adjustment, all that. So I spent like a few hours, like maybe 2 hours, tweaking UI, grabbing some images and putting them together to kind of restructure the field locations for the variables that I needed to change. And I showed you that setup and the overlay fill amount, right? And then I did the timer, and I was like, okay, I have the images that I need to adjust. Now I gotta do this script for it. And then I tested it and make sure it worked. Then I read the document and said, oh, I needed to show the time, not just like display the image as a countdown. I had to like have the number. So I added the text number, and then I changed the variables, and all of that is in here. This is what this is. And then I had to set up the enum, because I was like, okay, we need, now we have to flip the card, right? And so I had to do the backside of the card and make sure that it had a state for each one. And then I did the power, because I already had the player power recorded, and I need to do, okay, I need to set the score. So then I'm like, okay, how do I, like, where is the UI so I can reference it? Who should have that? And I put the game manager, because the game manager decides who wins. Controls the game. And so the zone control the game in that, at least like a mini game in that zone. that field, and everything that has to do with the field, like the effects, the powers, and what cards can do in there, or what happens to cards, is affected by that field. And then within the bigger picture of the board, the game manager is in charge of like the scores, and so they have the scores in here as a network object. And then we in here do the same thing, right? Like if the power is graded, player scored. Wait, this is the network field, sorry. Score. So in here, the game manager also has player scored. So these are network. And it can get confusing because these are, you have the score and the power, right? At the level of the other. Again, it can get confusing because like things are nested, but you have, it's just organization. And then you have in here my score, my enemy score, my enemy name, my display name. This one's a tough one. And this is where I want to ask you guys, I'm sorry it's taking a long time. I'm just trying to think of you and what you might be stuck in. And although I don't want to go over every single text of code or type, I want to explain to you what's going on so you understand the concept. But I'm going to ask you a question. I need you, if you have a better idea of how to do this, let me know. I set this up, right? So I have my score, my enemy score, and you see that in here. So you have this guy and this guy. This is me, this is my enemy. And because we flip, right, the left one is always me, regardless of if I'm the second player or the first. So the problem is that I can't just always say, okay, the left side is always the first player and the right side is always the second. It's actually the reverse, right? So, and so I want to show you the code because this is creating a little bit of if someone were to read my code, they probably wouldn't understand what the heck's going on, right? All because of that state authority change. So one thing is I could remove this, but from here, but I always check the first player and second player. Yeah, let me see. Where's the winning condition? Not winning condition. My score. Oh, so I have. Oh yeah, I remember now. So I have these fields, the player info. So I have field setup, player info. So when it has my name, in here, update player's name. This happens when the second player joins or when the game started. So now I changed the logic. When the game starts, I was like, okay, let's check both players. And I say, okay, if I have state authority, this is my name. So my display name is this data. And it's the same with this one because you got to understand this is only happening on the first player and this is only happening on the second player. The second player then updates this. And then because the second player usually joins second. So I know they both are there. And this is an RPC from the second player to everybody. So everybody's doing this. Now the first player, I check. Okay, so now I say, okay, display name for second player is this one because he just told me. And my name, my enemy name is that same name that I just displayed. But for the second player, my enemy name is the name of the first player. See how that can be confusing? That's how I have it for the display name. Now that's not that bad because it's just the display name. But when we get into the scores, I have to do the similar logic. And so every time I have a game-wide check or a game-wide thing that I need to update in that little corner for that player, I have to do this check because it's just the way I can tell which one's which. So I could do another function, or I could say player one component add, but it's just changing where that logic is. I always have to check as state authority, which is not complicated, right? So it's the same with the score. So when the score changes, I have to see like, okay, I changed the player score of player one, but that's different on each side, right? Because this is my score and this is my enemy score. And so this is working. So all of this is working, but it can get confusing, right? So my question to you guys is there a better way to structure my multiplayer game so that maybe the answer is do not check for a state authority, check for is player one or player two. But then again, I still run into the same problem, right? How would you combine or like make life easier by making it less confusing? Would you just change the left side to always be player 1 regardless if it's you or not, and then have the right side be player 2 regardless if it's you or not, and make that happen. Because if the left side is always player 1 and the right side is always player 2, then I don't have to do this, right? I can just say I can save these as player 1 score dot set text on both sides. So I just write one line of code and I don't have to check authority or anything. That makes sense. So what do you think? Should I leave it on the right? And it's all about this, right? Should I always have myself on the left side and my enemy on the right? Or does it matter? So I'll ask that to my friend of what he wants. Because then I have to rewrite things a little bit and change the variable names. But that's something I want to ask you guys. If you think of something more clever or better, let me know in the comments below. Because it's something that sometimes I struggle with. And it's something that I would bring up in a meeting or like a review thing with other developers. It's like, hey, this is how I did it, but I know it's not the prettiest. And the main thing is readability. Like someone comes in and here is like, what the heck's going on? Like, why is this happening versus like, this is like backwards. Like, what the heck's going on? It's just a reverse. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But that's why I just did it and moved on. Now, after doing all that, what I needed to do was I kept reading the log and I just kept checking the spreadsheet that I had from him. This one, and then I started looking at the locations. I did the booleans, like I said, but then I had to go back and it's like, okay, I need to fix the field updates for scores and respawning. So that was the crazy thing. So these fields had to like get destroyed, and that's when I did the network. And here I have the network, the hash set. So what I had to do is like, okay, I'm gonna save them. And this one I did use ChatGPT for a little bit. I was like, hey, can I add these and then this way? And I said, yeah, okay. So what I'm not doing these yet, but this is the preparation for moving cars from zone to zone. If I move a car from one zone to the other, I have to have a function so that each zone can talk to each other. And I have to figure out how they're going to communicate. Because right now the zones only communicate to the game manager. So I'll have to figure that out. So that way all the zones have the list of the cards that they have to destroy at the end of the cycle. So that's going to be fun. But in here, I add the card, the network. And then, so I do that. And then I have to figure out how to add that card in the right position later. Because, yeah, so there's a few things I have to think about. And network card add, setup. And let me show you where the other stuff is. Because I have the, like, okay. So the main thing is that I add him. And then I go in here. And this is a nice function that I do for the timer. I just copy paste it. So it's to transfer the seconds into minutes if I need it. But I won't need it for this because all of them will be less than 60 seconds, hopefully. Or if they're 80 seconds, you can see it's 80 seconds. It doesn't have to say a minute, 10 seconds. And then here, so in here is where I go through and just what I like to do with when I destroy stuff, and this might be something, a tip. Before I destroy or despawn things, with network objects, you have to despawn. Do not destroy, please. Like that, just it's gonna cause problems. I deactivate them because usually what happens, the game has to pick up memory to destroy things, and so sometimes Unity, and I'm not sure how Fusion works, but it's destroying under the hood. It's just doing more things. When Unity has to wait till there's enough memory, I believe, to allocate to destroy the component. Sometimes the game will chug, but there might be a delay. So I like to just deactivate it and just despawn the card. That's just how I like to do it. That way it happens immediately, and then whatever it needs to do on the back end, it can do that. Whatever it needs to, if it needs to take time before it gets destroyed, that's fine. But as the visuals, I want the visuals to be immediate. That's how I do it. There. And then in here, the nice thing is that in the game manager, when I create the fields, I was like, okay, now I need the fields to be able to communicate with the game manager, which I didn't have before when it spawned. So the game manager here, I added this. The network field needed the game manager to say, okay, I have this like win. The player won this field. The field needs to tell the game manager, communicate the player won. And I have this also in here. I added this function. Player join, player led. I showed you before. Field is when it's done. Okay, if I won, player scored. And I have a number here because it might happen that a field effect might change how many points you get, like double the points you win. I don't know. Like, so I didn't want to do anything, but I have the score in here to add to that in case. But for now, it's just one. And so we have the timer text, everything set up, the field creation. So I'm going to show you a little bit of. I created this prefab, and I make sure it was these other ones are variants, so I can so that they can switch. And what happens is these variants are based off the sheet in here. So you see that he has 3 names, so I decided to do those. Cards have inverted power, grants +1. Hard text is disabled here. That's interesting. I don't know how, if that's even advantage. But so, and here, so each one will have, see how it has a Boolean? So that one, and that's it. There might be better ways of doing the effects, but for now, I'm just like, I need to do this. I could do inheritance, like, and just saying, okay, all field cards have an effect, and then like apply effect, right, to the field. And then I can write the effects based on enums, but it's still the same logic. So it's a matter of where you want it, right? So if I have an enum and a drop down with the field effects, it's as if like I'm doing this, and then I'm gonna have to check anyway. So I could just, so by doing inheritance or some kind of logic where, okay, all field cards will have an effect enum. Choose this, it'll determine what it does, and do a switch statement, which it's the same as all these booleans, right? And then that means that this whole wall of text and booleans is not here, because there's going to be a wall of text somewhere in here that does all the logic. And so maybe I don't want the logic here. I want the logic in a effect field, so that way it's not hindering the logic here, and you just know that the effect gets played on start. That's a thought. We'll see on the next one how I end up doing it. I think I'm just gonna do. I like to do things the very like, how do you say it? Very base and like brain dead, because I don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to like figure out the best solution, and that time is in some instances wasted, because I'm here trying to weigh the options when I could have just gone with one route, just done it and have it done, versus like thinking about it. So like being paralyzed by decisions. We're done. Yeah, and next time we'll go over the winning condition and the effects, the fun stuff, and we'll have this game pretty close. And then we have to do the deck editor, which I don't like. It's the not so fun stuff, and we can always add a backend after, but we're not gonna actually make that for this version. And if you have any questions, let me know. If there's a game idea that you want me to make, Brawl Stars or the new Marvel game, I don't know, Marvel Rivals, or whatever other games that are out there that you think might be hard and we can tackle, let's do it. If you need help with your game, I'm building a community of game developers that want to finish their games, and that community is there to help you. Because once you finish your game, you don't know yet, but once you finish your games, you're gonna be struggling to figure out marketing, budgeting, all these other things that you never thought you needed to worry about. But that's why I built that community, is to help people finish games and help them with their future endeavors as a game developer. So we'll see you later.